The ballots may say Democrat or Republican, but this election cycle, it's felt more like imperialist, neocon, or racist fascist. The corporate-aligned two-party duopoly is dominating airwaves once again, and in turn, the corporate-funded media is selling only candidates whose agendas don't disrupt commercial fundraising. Donald Trump has turned out to be an advertiser's dream with his outrageous, clickbait-friendly proposals and arguments, fueled by and pandering to a general public that can barely keep up with his fascist and often sophomoric statements. The bloviating billionaire is emboldening a dangerous side of America, one that's racist to the core, bitter, and dedicated not to making America great again, but to rolling back centuries of American social progress. Meanwhile, other candidates like Hillary Clinton and Ted Cruz might as well be running as a single candidate under a neocon party. They support exporting American-style democracy, advocate for crony capitalism and neoliberalism, and call for the prosecution of Edward Snowden and an expanded version of the current national security state. They're also committed to taking the United States' relationship with apartheid Israel and Saudi Arabia to the next level. And despite Bernie Sanders' campaign against the oligarchy, his foreign policy is just a softer approach to the current military-industrial complex. There's only the illusion of choice in this winner-take-all system, unless you consider deciding between the lesser of two evils to actually be a choice. We the people are growing weary of the status quo. Over 50% of Americans believe a third political party is needed because the Republican and Democratic parties do such a poor job representing the American people. Yet the establishment driving these policies not only ignores the cries for an alternative that will bring about real change and real peace, but exclude candidates like Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, who oppose the corporate war machine. But that's not stopping others like Arn Menconi, though. The social justice activist is running as the Green Party candidate for office in Colorado, where he's challenging Democratic incumbent Michael Bennet. Unlike Donald Trump, Menconi may be exactly what's needed to make America great again. His track record of radical action against the corporate takeover of American democracy and his history of civil disobedience against U.S. wars would provide a needed counterbalance to the entrenched government establishment. Menconi joined me earlier, and I began by asking him why he believes America is no longer a democracy and how that's led to his third-party campaign for Senate. Check it out.
We're not a democracy anymore, or whether or not we have been a democracy, because of the amount of money that is electing our representatives. I was a former Eagle County commissioner here in Colorado. I had to raise $15,000 or $30,000 to run for office. The man I'm running against, U.S. Senator Michael Bennet, has already put in almost $7 million in his coffers, and he needs to get about $12 million. The only way you get money like this is if you go after corporations. So we're run by what I call a global corporate mafia, or is what Sheldon Walden and Chris Hedges says is corporate totalitarianism. They have essentially taken over the government. They control the rules and the regulations, the spending, such as 57% of our budget in 2018 will be towards the military.
Can you explain why the topic of Israel and Palestine is so important to you? I mean, how has your support for Palestinian human rights impacted your life personally?
Well, it cost me my job. I was speaking out about what was going on in Palestine during the 51-day war, simply on Facebook, just doing the balls and strikes, talking about how many Palestinian children were killed, etc. And people started calling me. I was running a national charity for disadvantaged youth. It was a $3 million charity. And I said, look, I'm not taking sides here. I run a youth charity. I'm talking about children being killed. I'm reporting. Then Obama started to take us back into the Middle East and Iraq against ISIS by saying he was going to save our embassy. And I knew that was going to be what I call you can't be a little pregnant, and it was going to lead to greater exposure in the Middle East. So I went out to Washington, D.C. and New York. I got involved in some protests, and within a couple of weeks, I had to step down from my job because our largest sponsor asked our board of directors for me to step down. You know, I'm just one example of people who, when they start to speak truth to power, there is repercussions in ways that we don't even realize. It could be speaking out against Israel and the apartheid movement that is taking place there. It could be speaking out about how Wall Street is operating in our government. But if you go too far outside, and I've been a guy who, as a county commissioner, people tried to recall me because I took a non-aggressive stance when in 2001 we went into Afghanistan, that there are repercussions. So I want to stand up and fight for the people who can't speak out because they need to raise their family. They need to keep their job. I want to be the guy that goes out and speaks truth to power. I have a record of 20 years of fighting, and I want to be one of 100 people in the U.S. Senate and expose the lies that are taking us into endless war, that are giving Israel billions of dollars every year, and that is giving Wall Street the rules and regulations that they need in order to make trillions of dollars.
Right. And going off of what you just said, I mean, why is stopping foreign wars and dismantling the war machine and empire building so important that you were willing to face arrest for it?
I mean, this is how simple it is. How many people are you willing to allow your taxpayer dollars to go to killing refugees and creating more terrorists? There are reported up to 60 million refugees around the world. Most of that is due to American imperialism or military intervention. We spent over $1.5 trillion in the last 15 years in the Middle East. Millions of people were killed and millions of people have been displaced. We go into these countries for regime change and we destroy their cities and their countries. We have supported Saudi Arabia, as an example, with nearly $180 billion in arms, and in less than a year, Yemen has been destroyed. There are over 13 million refugees out of Yemen alone. I want people to stop, and I know this is, you're not supposed to say this, but look at your complicity. That's what I do. Where am I being complicit? And look in your heart. And realize that peace is not profitable, and start speaking truth to power.
And those are obviously very strong stances to take in today's election cycle. What do you say to people who say voting third party is a wasted vote? Why is it so important to vote your conscience this election cycle?
Because these guys are banking on you not voting your conscience. They have drilled down and done data analysis as to how an election goes. So I'll give an example here in Colorado. It's a swing state. There will be less than 3 million people voting in November for president or senator or any of the other elections that are going on a statewide level. They know, and I was a Democrat, I know my U.S. Senator Michael Bennet. I've campaigned for Barack Obama and all of these guys. I've been inside the Magic Kingdom. All right, I know how they're thinking. They're analyzing that 1% of that election, if it goes Republican or Democrat, will make or break whether or not the powers that be, the corporate money interest, will get their way. I'm in there to go ahead and figure out, in the last election, there was 37,000 votes for a Green Party candidate. If I could get 2, 3, 4%, and I would say that my social media capabilities and what the Green Party brings to it and what Bernie Sanders or people who are following him understand, we could move that number up to 100,000. As soon as their internals start to see that it's almost 50, it will say 3% of the vote. I start to grab the narrative. We start to grab the narrative. Once we start talking about what's going on, they freak out. Once they start to freak out, they're going to have to go into other modes as to lying, cheating, and misleading the American people. The more we do this, now, the more they have to create some sort of change. And I don't know if we have enough time, but you're brilliant at talking about this. If we lose this election in the Senate and the TPP passes, it's going to make whether or not we have the Supreme Court kindergarten compared to this, because the TPP is going to redesign the type of judicial system that occurs internationally. I think it's very important to go out there and vote. We could easily win this election with around 800,000 votes, 700,000 votes if people vote their conscience in Colorado.
Well, thank you so much, Arn Menconi, for joining me today. Best of luck in your campaign for Colorado's Green Party candidate in the Senate. Best of luck.
Thank you, Manar.